In the bustling heart of Udochi village, Chizzy's restaurant stood as a beacon of culinary excellence. Located at the edge of the bustling market square, its aroma wafted through the air, beckoning villagers from far and wide. Known for her sumptuous dishes and flavors that seemed to dance on the tongue, Chizzy quickly earned a reputation as the best cook the village had ever seen. Her rise to fame was meteoric. Initially, she had a modest wooden stall where she sold simple meals of pounded yam, spicy egusi soup, and peppered goat meat. But it wasn't long before word spread about the magical taste of her cooking. Within months, queues formed every day, stretching far beyond her stall. The elders whispered that Chizzy's food had an otherworldly touch, a taste that lingered long after the meal. The younger men and women claimed it gave them strength and vigor. Even Chief Okoye, the village head, became a regular, often requesting her meals to be delivered to his palace. The women of Udochi initially admired Chizzy. Many of them sought her advice, hoping to replicate her recipes at home. But no matter how diligently they tried, their meals lacked her signature taste. The men in the village, entranced by Chizzy's food, began to spurn their wives' cooking. Husbands who once praised their wives' meals now found excuses to dine at Chizzy's restaurant. Tensions simmered in households as wives grew frustrated and jealous. "Have you tasted Chizzy's pepper soup?" one man remarked during a village gathering. "It's as if the gods themselves blessed her hands." "It's not just her hands," another chimed in. "I think she communes with the spirits of the forest." That's the only way to explain it. But not everyone celebrated Chizzy's success. Amid the praise and admiration, whispers of unease began to surface. Neka, the village herbalist, was among the first to voice her suspicions. "No one rises so quickly without some sacrifice," she said, her voice heavy with foreboding. "There's something unnatural about her success." Few paid attention to Neka's warnings. The villagers were too busy enjoying Chizzy's meals and the jovial atmosphere of her restaurant. But beneath the laughter and full bellies, strange things began to happen in Udochi. It started subtly, livestock mysteriously dying in the night, crops withering in certain parts of the village, and a growing sense of restlessness that swept through the community. A few women complained of vivid nightmares involving shadows and dark waters. Some elders, known for their spiritual sensitivity, reported feeling an oppressive energy whenever they passed by Chizzy's restaurant. Unbeknownst to the villagers, Chizzy harbored a dark secret. Each night, long after her restaurant had closed and the last lantern had been extinguished, she embarked on a chilling journey. Cloaked in darkness, she would walk to the edge of the village, where the dense forest concealed an old burial ground. Here, she fetched water from shallow pools that formed in the graves, water that she carried back to her kitchen under the cover of night. For Chizzy, this was the source of her power, a forbidden ritual taught to her by an old priestess in her youth. The water, steeped in the essence of death, was said to grant supernatural abilities when used in cooking. It was her secret ingredient, the source of her success, and the curse that would soon unravel the very fabric of Udochi. The shadows of the burial ground loomed over Chizzy as she filled her clay jar with the dark, stagnant water. The frogs croaked ominously in the distance, and the air was heavy with the smell of decay. Chizzy's hands trembled as she scooped the water, but she reminded herself of the price of power. "This is what it takes to stay on top," she muttered under her breath. As she returned to her home, the village was silent. She worked quickly, pouring the water into her cooking pots. The next morning, the restaurant opened as usual, and the villagers flocked to her doors. She smiled as they devoured her meals, unaware of the sinister ingredient behind the irresistible taste. Days turned into weeks, and the village women's frustrations reached a boiling point. Husbands began spending more money at Chizzy's restaurant, leaving little for their families. Children whispered that they preferred Chizzy's cooking to their mothers. This sparked tension in homes across Udochi. Neka, the herbalist, grew bolder in her warnings. "Something is wrong with her food," she insisted to a group of women. "It enslaves the mind. Haven't you noticed how the men act as if they're under a spell?" But most dismissed Neka's claims as jealousy. "She's just bitter because Chizzy's food is better," one woman scoffed. However, a few women began to wonder. Strange occurrences in the village, dreams of water and shadows, the unexplained illnesses among livestock, couldn't all be coincidences. The women of the village decided to take action. They formed a secret council, meeting at night in Neka's hut to discuss their concerns. "We need proof," said Adaku, a fiery woman known for her courage. "If Chizzy is truly using something unnatural, we must expose her." Neka agreed. "I'll make a potion that will reveal the truth. But we need someone to watch her closely." After much debate, 3 women were chosen to monitor Chizzy's movement. The plan was set in motion. They began their surveillance. By day, they dined at Chizzy's restaurant, feigning admiration for her cooking. By night, they watched her home from the shadows. It didn't take long before they noticed something peculiar. One night, they saw Chizzy slipping out of her house with a jar. Silently, they followed her through the forest until she reached the burial ground. Hidden among the trees, they watched as she filled her jar with the grave water. The women rushed back to Neka with the news. The herbalist listened gravely. "This is worse than I thought," she said. "That water is cursed. It's no wonder the village is suffering." The council decided to confront Chizzy. The next day they stormed her restaurant. "We know your secret," Attica shouted, slamming the jar of grave water onto the counter. The crowd gasped, and Chizzy's confident smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but the fear in her eyes betrayed her. The confrontation quickly escalated, and soon the village elders were called to the scene. Chief Okoye demanded answers. "Chizzy, explain this," he thundered, holding up the jar. Cornered, Chizzy confessed. She spoke of the old priestess who had taught her the ritual, claiming she only wanted to succeed. "I never meant to harm anyone," she pleaded. But the elders were furious. Using cursed water to manipulate the village was unforgivable. They declared that Chizzy would be banished. The day of Chizzy's exile was somber. The villagers gathered to watch as she was escorted out of Udochi. Some felt pity, but most were relieved to see her go. Her once thriving restaurant was left abandoned, a stark reminder of her betrayal. Chizzy walked into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on her back. She carried the weight of her shame and the fear of what awaited her in exile. In the weeks following Chizzy's departure, the village began to heal. The strange occurrences ceased, and the men returned to their families' cooking. However, Chizzy's exile was far from peaceful. The spirits of the burial ground, angered by her misuse of their essence, began to haunt her. Alone in the forest, Chizzy was plagued by visions of shadows and water. She heard voices whispering her name and saw figures lurking in the darkness. Her once sharp mind began to unravel. Chizzy's health deteriorated rapidly. Without food or shelter, she grew weak. The spirit's torment took its toll, and she became a shadow of her former self. One stormy night, she collapsed by a riverbank, her body too frail to continue. As the rain poured down, Chizzy took her final breath. The villagers later found her body, lifeless and cold, her face twisted in anguish. They buried her far from Udochi, ensuring her spirit would not disturb the peace of the village again. Following Chizzy's death, Udochi village was far from at peace. The elders knew the spiritual contamination caused by her actions would linger unless properly addressed. Neka, the herbalist, proposed a cleansing ritual to purify the village. The elders called for a gathering at the market square. Neka explained the ritual to the villagers, stressing its importance. We must cleanse the land, the water, and our spirits. Chizzy's actions have left a stain on Udochi, but together we can restore balance. The ritual began at dawn. The villagers brought offerings of kola nuts, palm oil, and white cloths to the sacred grove. Chanting filled the air as Neka and other spiritual leaders invoked the ancestors to bless and protect the community. With the ritual complete, life in Udochi began to normalize. The land seemed to breathe again, crops flourished, and livestock thrived. The women reclaimed their kitchens, preparing meals with renewed pride and vigor. The men, now aware of their neglect, sought to repair their relationships with their wives. Chief Okoye declared a festival to celebrate the village's renewal. "Let this be a time of unity and reflection," he said. The festival marked a turning point, reminding the villagers of the strength in community and tradition. Despite the village's recovery, Chizzy's name lingered in whispers. Some villagers claimed to see her shadow near the burial ground or hear her wails during stormy nights. These stories, though chilling, served as a warning to the younger generation about the dangers of greed and dishonesty. "Her story must never be forgotten," said Attica during a gathering. "Let it remind us to respect the natural order and the spirits that guide us." The secret council of women that exposed Chizzy's deeds decided to remain active. They named themselves Umunem, meaning daughters of our mothers, and dedicated their efforts to safeguarding the village's values. Their influence grew, and they worked with the elders to ensure fairness and transparency in community decisions. Adaku emerged as a strong leader, inspiring younger women to take pride in their roles as guardians of tradition. With Udochi thriving once more, traders from neighboring villages began visiting the market. The village's reputation for resilience and unity spread, attracting opportunities for growth. The women of Umunem played a key role, teaching others about the importance of respect for culture and spirituality. Even the land seemed to reward the village's restoration. Rivers ran clearer, and the harvests were bountiful. The elders credited this prosperity to the ancestors' blessings. One night, Nneka had a vivid dream. She saw Chizzy's spirit trapped in a swirling pool of water, her eyes pleading for release. The dream troubled Nneka deeply. The next morning, she consulted the elders. "Chizzy's spirit is restless," she said. "Though she caused harm, she was one of us. We must perform one final ritual to guide her to the afterlife and ensure peace for all." The elders approved Nneka's plan. A small group, including members of Umunem, journeyed to the riverbank where Chizzy had died. They carried offerings of food, herbs, and a white shroud to honor her spirit. As they performed the ritual, the wind picked up, and the river's surface rippled unnaturally. Nneka whispered prayers, calling on the ancestors to accept Chizzy's spirit. When the ritual ended, the wind ceased, and the group felt a profound stillness. They knew the spirit had been laid to rest. The elders declared a day of remembrance for Chizzy, not to celebrate her deeds, but to teach future generations about the consequences of greed and disrespect for spiritual laws. Stories about her rise and fall were woven into the village's oral tradition. Parents often used Chizzy's story to caution their children. Do not seek shortcuts and always honor the spirits that watch over us. The ordeal with Chizzy brought the village closer together. Men, women, and children understood the importance of unity and shared responsibility. Festivals became grander, and communal projects flourished. Adaku and the Umunem expanded their efforts, mentoring young girls and hosting workshops on farming, cooking, and storytelling. The group became a cornerstone of Udochi's cultural preservation. Years passed, and Udochi village thrived like never before. The market grew, new families settled in, and the village became a beacon of tradition and prosperity. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Nneka sat with a group of children, recounting the story of Chizzy. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder and caution. "Remember," Nneka concluded, "Udochi's strength lies in its people and their respect for the unseen forces that guide us." Chizzy's tale is a reminder that while ambition can lead us to greatness, it must be tempered with wisdom and humility. As the children dispersed, Nneka gazed at the horizon, content in the knowledge that Udochi's future was in capable hands. Chizzy's story, though tragic, had become a source of wisdom, ensuring that the village would never stray from its path again.